Hey everybody, this is Perch, and this is a question that's come up before in different kind of formats. But it's Wednesday, so we'll answer it again. That sounds more snarky than I mean, but basically the question is, hey, why don't companies? Why don't the whether it's Boom or it's Image or it's Marvel or DC or Dark Horse or Action Labs or whoever it be, why don't they have a social media policy? And why don't they enforce that social media policy? Basically, it's like, hey, a lot of these crazy kind of rants and tweets and other silliness that goes on, why doesn't the company come in and put a stop to that? And the answer to that is actually fairly simple, but it's not an answer that most people want to hear. Basically, the majority of people who work in comics are freelancers. They're not employees. And freelancers, you have to be a little careful with how you treat them, because if you put rules on them, put restrictions on them, like an employee has, then that freelancer can turn around and say, hey, you're treating me for all intents and purposes like an employee. And so therefore I deserve benefits and I deserve stock and I deserve the other things that you give your employees. And it's not foolproof, but there were some lawsuits that happened, very historically back in the 90s, where people successfully sued Microsoft. Now, granted, people in comics probably don't have the money to sue Marvel and DC over this, but it just takes kind of one person kind of going at them. And there's been rumblings and I think even exploration attempts in the past to try and make this work. So the companies have been very, determined, very solid on keeping people as freelancers. And that's so it locks in the status quo. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, what about the editors? What about your Tom Brevoorts or your Conroys or your Antoses or people like that? They're employees. That's true. And in that case, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, there are social media policies that exist at DC and at Marvel via their parent companies, Disney and AT&T, or Warner Media. And for a while I thought, well, maybe those just don't transfer. And then I was told firsthand by a lawyer who works for Marvel that absolutely they're transferable. Your contracts as an employee at Marvel absolutely live by those same standards. In fact, it's copied in the employee handbook or some kind of document that's given out to people. There is a social media policy. It's just not enforced. Why isn't it enforced? I think nobody wants to. This is one of those cases where it's a ticking time bomb. Eventually, something's going to get said. There's going to be some legal action, and suddenly these things are going to get enforced. I think that you're going to see weird bipartisan agreement. You don't have it today, but you're going to see bipartisan agreement at some point to make the tech companies accountable for some of the things that get posted. That's something that the right wing has been pushing and the left wing's been resisting. But I think as we get into these new elections, and especially if the midterms are not favorable to the Democrats, and historically they aren't, then I think you're going to see kind of both parties start to unify around this idea of like, we can't have people out there just running their mouth. Sometimes they help us, sometimes they hurt us, but it's not worth it. And then you're going to see some crackdown on this. And then once you see that happening, then I think all the cards fall. I think that the big companies start enforcing this stuff. I think the social media companies radically start to change how they do business. I do think that moment is coming. It can't run like it currently is, unchecked and nutty, for much longer. But I will say this. I think that it's if you want to solve this problem, then a mandate from the company is not the best way to solve the problem. Some of these people, we already have seen Dan Slott in the past has used an alt screen name so he could go on posting kind of crazy stuff and in some cases back himself up on arguments. We saw this back on the CBR boards. A lot of these people just, go that direction. I think that the solution here, if the problem is we don't like kind of this crazy behavior that goes on Twitter, then rules and mandates aren't going to fix that. What's going to fix that is finally convincing these people that doing this is absolutely not in their self-interest. And I think there's signs certainly that some of this stuff is coming now. I think some of the people who are on Substack, remarkably, they're deleting their Twitter accounts. Now, in many cases, I think they're doing that because there is a code of conduct for that bonus that you got out of Substack. It's not this doesn't tell you what not to do. It doesn't tell you can't say certain things, but it does make it a little. It basically puts more on the table. And this is one of the reasons why I do this argument that I swear half the people don't get. It's if you pay more, if you put more money into comics, then suddenly comics, if getting rolled out of comics or doing the wrong thing and screwing it up, you have more to lose. And so that does create, we've seen in the past, it does create some better behavior. If people start to self-select into not being nuts because they have something to lose. And I think that's healthy. That's a healthier way of going about things. And I do think we can get to that point. By the way, just so positive stuff. If you're on Twitter, 2 accounts or 3 accounts you should follow just right now. Walt Simonson, he posts art. It's great. It's just wonderful. Bob Layton. Bob Layton's doing this thing of like, here's a bunch of unused sketches I did for Iron Man armor. Like, why aren't you following that? Oh my God, it's great art. And no bullshit, just good art. And then I like Colleen Doran. I think she posts solid thoughts on the industry. What's funny is I guarantee you she's not listening to the show, but she is. She posted the other day like, to avoid a lot of the drama, I just queue up all my tweets using like Hootsuite, and that way I don't get drawn into all the nonsense. I'm like, I've given that advice. That's good advice, absolutely, for managing your platforms. But in general, I think it's just it's better for people to just not get to basically decide for themselves. I've got too much to lose by engaging with this stuff. That's going to be healthiest. And there's really, again, all the rules, you can put things in place, you can engage that battle, but people have to come to realize it's in their self-interest. I don't know. Like I've said in other videos lately, my time in Twitter is definitely close to coming to an end. I need to do 2 or 3 more things. And then I mean, there's little enjoyment or little value. As I mentioned, I followed some posts that some people that post artwork, and I think that's great. I'm not going to give that up. But the other stuff is just, it's too much nonsense and too much trigger happy idiots who are waking up and deciding the personality I want to be today is dick. And that's completely on them. It's funny. People ask me on a semi-regular basis, like, do you like Trump or do you like Biden? And that's a litmus test kind of, kind of question. And if you go back, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll notice I wasn't when Trump got elected, there weren't thousands of posts praising or bitching about Trump. And Biden got elected, and there's not thousands of posts bitching or electing or either pro or con about Biden either on my timeline. There never has been. Why? Because I don't think you really give a shit. I mean, to be blunt, who cares? Who cares what I think about that kind of stuff? Nobody. And I think that I want more creators to come to that realization that nobody really cares. You're posting something for yourself. That's cool, but nobody cares. It's bad engagement. It's junk food engagement. But anyway, that's the reason why people, why the companies aren't cracking down on it. I mean, legally, it's questionable. I think they're worried about opening up other doors if they crack down on it. And it's laziness. It's not worth their time. The pain of it has to get worse for the actual companies in order for it to be worth their time. But I think that's going to get. We're on an unsustainable path where Twitter and Facebook are concerned at the moment, and it's the only question mark is how quickly it all blows up, because it's blowing up sooner rather than later. But I'll end this with this way: for those people who are obsessed about my politics for reasons best known only to you, I think I've come to realize a very influential movie in my life was Brewster's Millions. And I bet people don't say that a lot, but part of that movie is that the ultimate conclusion of, hey, all these options suck, vote none of the above. I find myself in that state of mind more often than I'd like. The none of the above option just sounds great. I continue to be, I shouldn't be, but be amazed that we have, over 150 million eligible candidates. And this is what we pick every 4 years. This is it. Awesome. Anyway, Brewster's Millions. It's a classic. It's a film of our timeline. Richard Pryor's just awesome. But anyway, there you go. There's your answer. And thanks for listening.